presence of Tim Burgess, who grew up here in town. Tim went to the University of Maine, and then he went to Mass College of Pharmacy. And it's not an easy course, let me tell you. There's a lot of hard work and a lot of studying. And so Tim worked while he was going to school for Joe Price. And I bet a lot of people here in the room remember Joe Price. Tim worked for Joe for many years, and you did your internship with him, didn't you?
No.
No?
No. I was in school for pharmacy, just beginning pharmacy school, and I worked for him, and then the day that he put the key in the door, the last day, I was still in school.
Oh.
And I was standing with him when he did it.
Yeah. So, anyway, I'd like to present to you Tim Burgess, North Reading's own pharmacist, who has wonderful things to tell us about the past. He's done a lot of research, and he's got lots of good things here in his collection that he's going to show us tonight. So, welcome, Tim.
I'd like to say that it's really good to see so many familiar faces, but I can't because it would be a violation of HIPAA policies. But you know who you are. And I'd like to, my brother in the back there, I'll tell you, he worked for Joe before I did.
Really?
Yep, Scott worked for Joe, and then my younger brother Chris worked for Joe before I did.
Wow.
And I just happened to start working for him during breaks when I was at the University of Maine. And when I graduated, I started working for him full time, and I decided I'd go pro. So, I always get jealous of these people that present, and they've got their PhDs and their masters and stuff. So I put everything I could possibly put in. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. Apparently, it's not a science; it's an art. And a Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy, and that's just stands for Registered Pharmacy. And Timmy, of course. Every time I come back from vacation, I get everybody saying, they called asking for Timmy. We tried to help. They said, nope, I'm going to wait for Timmy to come back. And I can't tell you how proud that makes me feel when I come home from vacations and things, that just, all the Timmies. So I want to get moving just because I don't know what's going to happen with this computer. That's me skydiving. I think people heard me talk about it earlier. That's what happens when you're dealing with drugs too much. So tonight's presentation is, that's actually another, okay, so I have funny technicians too. They nailed me with that. That's actually a very old picture. Tonight's presentation, well, Better Living Through Chemistry. That's actually caffeine right there.
Oh.
All right, so yes, Better Living Through Chemistry. The paper had it down as Pharmacy for America, and it really isn't Pharmacy for America, it's Pharmacy in America. And when I got the information on this, I was given a recipe from Daniel Putnam that had juniper oil and castor, and then spirit of vitae. Those are the other things that I could make out, and I forget who actually translated it, that sent me the original. You're,
Stone Jason.
yes, you should be a pharmacist. To be able to read that handwriting, and what you did to translate that is amazing, because that's what we trained for almost exclusively for years, is deciphering the hieroglyphics. But that was fantastic. But I didn't think, I could talk for 45 minutes or so about juniper oil and castor. They, of course, are used for the stomach and stuff, and juniper berries are the berries that are used to make gin, which is very popular. But so what I did was I found a host of recipes from a physician from Salem, Danvers area, from the 1600s. That if you've eaten already, you might lose it. It's incredible what people put themselves through back then. But, and that's why I have the you boiled what with what and want me to drink it. And you'll see soon what that's all about. So I decided to break it up into some parts here. Like, why do we have medicine historically? What has happened through our lives? Through our lives, we're uncomfortable. We have things happen. Humans are a very curious, experimental beast. We communicate very well with each other. It doesn't always seem that way, but we're observant. We see things. But through history, illness and disease have changed so many major things. Civilization, wars, slavery, art, borders, rulers, policies, science, literature are influenced by healthcare and drugs. Illicit drugs and drugs you would want to take, herbs, spices, things like that. So what I want to do is I want to start off talking about some major healthcare crises that have happened through history and how they might have changed things in history. And at the end, I'm going to get to the recipes and stuff. That's the fun part. But first, I want to start off with the Black Death. 1300s. This was pretty horrible. This is the bubonic plague. They think it was spread. They originally thought rats and mice and things like that, but it turns out that recently they've been talking about gerbils spreading, which I just think of them a gerbil from my first grade class running on a wheel, but apparently they were running wild at one point. Go figure. Gerbils in the wild. So a pretty horrible time. Now, I don't know if this is going to work, and I hope it doesn't screw things up, but I actually have a video, and if I'm not hooked up to the internet, I can't show you, and I don't think I am. So I'm just going to skip it. But what it is, and you can go online and find this. If you look up a YouTube video, it's the world population. And what it does is it represents the population of the Earth by little light dots. And it's pretty impressive if you see it, but I'm sorry. It's the only video I have. It's the only thing that's going to screw up on this, hopefully. But you can watch the timeline, and when you get to the Black Death, which was the 1300s, you look at Europe, and it's just packed with lights. And all of a sudden, each dot of light represented 1 million people. And the lights just start flickering out within 20, 30 years. Yes?
Jim, what's the name of the video again?
It's, if you just Google YouTube, it's population, world population timeline. It should pop up. It's about a 7-minute video, and it actually starts at year 0, the year Christ was born, and then it actually extrapolates out to 2050, and it shows you the population. At the end, it's like 10 billion people in 2050. That's what they're expecting in 2050. Right now, we're about 6. All right. When the Black Death happened, there was less than 1 billion people. Probably about 500 million people. 50 million people perished, according to reports. 50 million people perished from Black Death, and that was just basically in Europe. So if you've got a population in the world that's about 500 million people, and 50 million people died, that's 10% of the world population. That was about half, at least, the population of Europe from that. And not to scare you, the bubonic plague exists, and you can find it as close as California. There are at least 2 or 3 cases of the bubonic plague every year in California. If you go to Yellowstone, they have signs that say, do not feed the squirrels, because you can get the bubonic plague. It's, it's more treatable, it's, with sanitation and everything, it's, chances of getting it are slim to none, but it is still there. I clumped smallpox and yellow fever together because kind of around the same time I wanted to talk about, but smallpox is something that killed, up till the 20th century, probably 300 million people, up until the 20th century. That's more people that have died in all the wars combined. Pretty horrible disease. You get fever, blisters, painful blisters covering your entire body. Borders were determined by this. Wars were determined by this. Leaders were killed. I mean, this was devastating. And correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who's versed in Revolutionary War history, we sent some militia up to Canada to try to retake, I think it was either Quebec or Montreal. 10,000, and we outnumbered the enemy. And about 10,000 of the troops contracted smallpox. They had to turn and run. To show you what effect that had, Canada could have been part of the United States. We'd all have universal health care, cheap drugs, better hockey teams. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant thing. Yellow fever and smallpox combined, 500 conquistadors landed in South America. And they had the Aztecs, the Incas, the huge, wonderful developed civilizations. And they weren't really afraid of the Spaniards until they all started getting smallpox. And, well, their God must be stronger than ours. And they became subservient and became their slaves, basically. And the Europeans, basically, with their disease, wiped them out. What's significant about that, though, is that it appears that apparently Africans were immune to or had a resistance to yellow fever. And so what happened was when they ran out of slaves from the natives, they started to, it didn't necessarily start because of this, but it was a huge influence on slave trade. They started bringing them in because they could survive the diseases. So imagine if they were immune to it and weren't afraid of the Spaniards and drove them away. The difference in history, what could have happened. There was only been one successful slave revolt, and I believe it was in Haiti. And the reason that was successful was because I believe it was malaria. The Europeans would catch, and the natives were immune to it. The slaves were immune to it. So that was one of the only successful slave revolts. And it's all medicine. It's all, that means, get your immunizations. Right? So smallpox, luckily, has been eradicated from the face of the earth with 2 exceptions. There's one, I believe, a strain that they keep in the CDC in Atlanta. And I believe either Russia or England has another strain. There are 2 strains, they just keep them just in case. God forbid it comes back and they need to make some vaccines. I'm going to move a little faster through these. Spanish flu. Scott and I both lost a great aunt. My grandfather's sister died from the Spanish flu, and anybody that's been to my parents' house have seen posters that were painted by beautiful World War I posters. That's, I believe, Dartmouth College. They were that 20 to 30 million people worldwide perished from this. More people that actually died from this than in World War I. The deaths in World War I. I believe it was in the United States. It was like something like 50,000, but pretty tremendous. And they stopped you from spitting. I couldn't have survived. I walk around spitting all the time. I don't know why they have to have a sign up like that. So you can't spit. It's going to spread disease.
You play baseball?
I know. All right, this is polio. Those are iron lungs. Another pretty horrible. We all probably either know somebody who's had polio, and if you don't know somebody personally who has polio, Franklin Delano Roosevelt had polio. This was pretty horrendous too. This is almost completely eradicated. There are some cases in, I think the Middle East had some recently. There are some cases around, but through vaccinations, immunizations, this is pretty controllable. HIV. HIV is the virus. You catch HIV, you don't catch AIDS. AIDS is a result of HIV. Nowadays, it is completely controlled. It's not curable. You can't cure it. There's no vaccine for it yet, and there have been no spontaneous cures. And we hear about babies and people are going down and stuff. They eventually get it back again. But it is highly controllable. Epidemic in Africa right now, and it's a shame because there's medicine. There's medicine out there. We could halt that pretty quick. You're not going to stop it from necessarily spreading, but you can stop it from getting sick. And as a side note, besides Joe Price being the major influence as to why I was a pharmacist, this time I was working with Joe, we lost a little baby boy, probably about 4 years old, whose parents were both intravenous drug users. Beautiful, beautiful kid. And he passed away from AIDS at 4. And I went to his funeral, not to be a bummer, but little white casket. It was horrendous. But I was told that I was the last person to make the boy smile. And that affected me so much that I just thought, if that one thing, and I become a pharmacist, I can do that again to somebody else to help out. It was amazing. But that was one of my major influences was that situation. More recently, Ebola. This is very, very nasty. This is probably, they're all horrible, but this one here is called hemorrhagic flu, fever. Basically, it's very aggressive, very fast. That's why it doesn't spread very far. Somebody will die from this very fast, so luckily that's the case, because then it can't get onto an airplane and travel around. The person's going to be dead most likely before they get there. Now, there's no cure for this. There are people who have survived it, but basically and I'm not going to show you pictures of anybody with these because they're horrendous. Basically, your insides turn to jelly and leak out of your body. It's horrendous. But people get fear, and they put people on tarmacs in quarantine because they just don't understand. They don't understand the disease. It's understandable to be afraid, but more knowledge helps out. And lately, this is the new one, the Zika virus. This one here, we're still learning about. It's transmitted by a mosquito, a very specific type of mosquito that does not, it's very, very, very rare in the United States. It has a cousin that's more prevalent, but apparently can't transmit the disease. They're finding that it also can be sexually transmitted. They just found this out. And if you or I to get this disease, you would get a rash, possibly a fever, you'd feel bad for 3 days, and you'd be done with it. The horrendous part of this is that it attacks growing brain cells. And so that's why when pregnant women get it, the brain cells of the fetus is growing, and it's being attacked by the virus, and so you get something called microencephaly, which is a basically shrunken head, a lot of brain damage. It's horrendous. And why this is so important too is because Brazil has actually asked the population of women to refrain from having children for 2 years. And it sounds like, okay, that sounds like an easy fix. But think about what's going to happen if you don't have children for 2 years. There's not going to be a first or second grade, and that's going to continue on. You're going to lose teachers, baby formula, diapers, doctors, all this stuff. It's a profound effect on society. People who go into the Olympics don't want to go, you know? And that's sort of what happened with AIDS too, is people didn't want to go to public swimming pools, you know? They didn't want to go to the dentist. I mean, and it was kind of a lack of knowledge and a fear, and it's understandable too, because these are all very frightening things. Okay, so we're going to move to a lighter subject. These are famous addicts, drug users, and the reason I'm showing this is because some of these things influenced art, science, literature, drugs. Mostly illicit, but some not. That painting is by Gauguin. That is Van Gogh. Van Gogh, lend me your ear. He definitely had some mental issues. He was depressed. But his drugs of choice are alcohol and something called digitalis. Digitalis comes from that plant right there, which is the foxglove. Some of you may be taking, and I'm not going to point anybody out, but some of you may be taking something called digoxin. Digoxin is used in congestive heart failure. It helps your heart pump more efficiently. But back then, it was used for epilepsy, and it's suggested that Van Gogh might have had epilepsy. And so he would take digitalis. Now, does anybody recognize that painting?
Yeah.
Starry Night.
Starry Night. And what stands out of that? The stars. What about the stars?
They got halos.
They do. That's a result of digitalis toxicity. If you get too much digitalis, you get visual disturbances that create halos around lights. He painted that after he had removed his ear and was sitting in an asylum window, and that's where he painted it from. But some of his mental issues may have been due to the digitalis toxicity, but that's what happens when you have digitalis toxicity. This is his doctor. Another visual disturbance is you get lots of yellows, lots of pale pastels and stuff. And he doesn't look as happy as Van Gogh. I mean, he's like, I want away from you, Van Gogh. Please, just let me leave. You know, he looks so sad. So Charles Dickens was addicted to opium and actually may have died as a result of it. I'm not sure, but opium is the. Whenever somebody says they're talking about narcotics, narcotics are opium-based drugs. We have a class called Schedule 2s, which I keep in my safe, that have ADD, Ritalin, amphetamines. Those are not narcotics. Narcotics are only opium-based. If you come in for cough medicine, Robitussin with codeine, that's a narcotic, because the codeine is a narcotic. Not as controlled as the other ones, but that's the basis of it. Sigmund Freud, cocaine. He was actually a big proponent of this, and cocaine is actually, interestingly enough, not an illicit medication. It's not in the same class as a marijuana, an LSD, or a heroin. It is actually used in hospitals for anesthesia. It's a Schedule 2, which is highly controlled, and you can't come to me with a prescription for cocaine and have me hand you cocaine. It's an injectable, it's used topically on the inside of the nose for nasal surgeries and things like that, but you can't get it from me. Winston Churchill was on amphetamines. He would help him stay awake for plotting the retaking of Europe. Okay, just a warning. The next slide. Stephen King. That picture was taken circa 1970. You'll see it's the main campus. That's the student newspaper. I cut it off. The bottom of it has a caption that says, "Study, damn it." Every year, this is the reason I went to the University of Maine. I wanted to be the next Stephen King. And apparently he taught a course at UMaine, but stopped teaching it the first year I was there. So I became a psychology major. Every year at finals, twice a year, that would be the cover of the main campus. Every year when we'd have finals coming up, that picture of Stephen King would be on there. He was into a lot of things. He'd make a cocktail of all that stuff: cocaine, alprazolam, diazepam, beer, NyQuil, tobacco, marijuana. He's now sober. The family did an intervention. He is a very nice guy. He always has been. He's very, very big with the community up in Bangor. He built a baseball park for the kids and coached Little League, and he donates, and he could walk down the street, people would just say, "Hi Steve, how you doing?" And that's it. You know, he's just one of the people. He's a good, good guy. He spoke at my graduation, luckily, so I did get a little bit of a speech from him at least. All right.
Tim, what's the
Alprazolam.
Yeah.
That's
What
Xanax.
is that?
That's Xanax.
Oh.
It's anything that ends with an AM, alprazolam, diazepam, lorazepam, oxazepam, temazepam. Those are benzodiazepines. They're kind of anti-anxiety, help you sleep, so on and so forth. And he used a couple of them. Beatles, just name it. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I mean, I don't care what anybody says, that's LSD. I mean, plasticine porters with looking glass ties. The girl with kaleidoscope eyes. I mean, look at this picture. How could they not be taking drugs? Unbelievable. But as a result, very good music. One thing, just jumping back to Stephen King, one of the things with the drug use with him was that he is admitted to not remembering writing some of his books.
Wow.
So they were possibly influenced by the medications. Right? And so these guys here too. I mean, read lyrics of any of these and you'll see it's amazing. All right, so now we're going to cut to the history of pharmacies. And pharmacists per se, being called pharmacists, really didn't happen until the 1800s.
Till
The
when?
1800s.
Okay.
Yeah, the first college of pharmacy was the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy, and it was in the mid-1800s. You know what the second one was? The Mass College of Pharmacy. Yeah, a few years after this. But before that, they were called priests, wizards, shamans, alchemists, barbers, the ones that cut your hair. They also removed anything you need to have removed from your body. And the Sweeney Todd is not inaccurate. It's pretty horrendous, these guys. And that's why a barber pole is striped like that. It's a red stripe for the blood, and the cloth is the white, and, you know. Chemists, druggists, pharmacists, and it's from Gandalf to Joe Price. Gandalf being, that's not Gandalf, that's actually Snape from Harry Potter. A wonderful actor named Alan Rickman, who just passed away. He's one of my favorites. But anybody have any idea when they think the oldest evidence of pharmaceutical use in history? Egypt, yeah. Anybody, anything else? Would it surprise you if I told you it was the Neanderthals?
Wow.
A couple researchers in Spain did study on, and this is another public service announcement: brush your teeth and floss. These guys found 50,000-year-old Neanderthal skulls and were able to scrape tartar off of their teeth. And with some pretty sophisticated chemistry, they found several things that I think are fascinating. The first one is they found smoke ash. And in order for you to get that much smoke into tartar 50,000 years later, you can't just stick your face over a fire and go. So most likely they were cooking. They were using fire to cook 50,000 years ago, Neanderthals. Two other things that they found that are actually, to me, more fascinating is they found evidence of yarrow and chamomile. And what's so important about that is neither one of those has any nutritional value whatsoever. You don't eat it to make yourself healthy nutritionally. They're also extraordinarily bitter. Now you have chamomile tea and it's enjoyable, put you to sleep, whatever. But you're not going to take the chamomile tea leaves and chew on them and ingest them that way. So they're extraordinarily bitter, but they both have medicinal properties. They're both settling to the stomach. The yarrow has an astringent property which helps with cankers and things like that, mouth sores and so on and so forth. So they determined that they most likely And you know, you can't, nothing's 100% that far away, but most likely they were being used for medicinal purposes, right? But you know, curious beings, they might have seen an animal eating something, and or one of maybe they had some, I don't know, livestock or something that had loose stool, and they went and ate something, and that went away. So they said, hey, that might work for me, and tried it. I don't know, anybody has a dog, when a dog gets an upset stomach, it goes in and eats grass. You know, it's using medicine for itself without even knowing it. Right? So we move way forward, and here's the Egyptians. This is 48,500 years later. This is called the Papyrus Ebers, or Ebers. There's 800 different medicines listed, made up of 700 different drugs. So imagine what happened between the Neanderthals and the Egyptians. Just like an evolution of medicine. And a lot of majority of things actually worked. You know, I can't tell you what that says. We study, of course, in hieroglyphics at school, so we can translate doctor's handwriting, but that's a little much for me. All right, so this is Galen. He was a Greek Roman. Aside from Hippocrates, this is probably one of the biggest names in medical history. He came up with the original compound for cold cream, which is almost exactly the way it is now as the way it was then, 120 AD. His principles and his compounding methods were used for the next 1,500 years. Brilliant, brilliant mind. This next guy, Paracelsus, looks like a milk toast. He was a toughie. He was a jerk, not a nice guy. He changed his name to Paracelsus. I have his name written down somewhere. It's not showing up on my thingy here, but it's about 10 different names. Here we go. So he is Philippus Aurelius Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim. He's the father of modern toxicology. This little book right here, which is the crux of the symposium, is based on Galenic chemistry and Paracelsus chemistry, and this was written in the 1600s. All right, so he's much later than Galen was, but still very influential. He may have died in a bar fight. He's been kicked out of countries and schools and stuff, but he believed in the scientific method more. He didn't believe in the bloodletting stuff and the incantations and thinking you dance around something that's going to make him feel better. He poo-pooed that a lot. He kind of gravitated to the common man back then, but he doesn't look like it, but I guess he was a ruffian. All right, anybody know who John Winthrop was?
Oh, yes.
First governor of Massachusetts.
Yeah. John Winthrop owned a store, a little shop, and he, as governor, couldn't get professionals to come and do things, so he kind of took it upon himself to trade in medicine with Europe. So he would bring medicine here, send medicine there, and what they noticed when he came to the United States, they noticed Native Americans eating things and treating things with certain. So they learned from Native Americans certain types of cures and stuff, and so they'd send it back to Europe and back and forth. And as the world expands, you see that's what happens. We start communicating with each other. We observe other people doing things, and we get more medicine, more advanced stuff. But he was pretty much one of the first drug dealers in the colonies, you know, in a good way. In a good way. He wasn't standing on a street corner trying to, you know, score stuff. Okay, so there's an explanation of this. Zerubbabel Endicott, all right? He was the son of the governor Endicott. This is the thing that he wrote, this little treatise here. Not a very nice family. He impregnated a servant at a very young age, and they tried to hide it by basically giving her her freedom, marrying her to another servant. He left the country for a few years, and when he came back, he was a physician. And he was living in Salem, Danvers, that area. But you'll understand the cat, the grumpy cat, the no, just no, in a few minutes. This is what was said to me, the Daniel Putnam. I'm sorry, I don't know. I know the Putnam House and growing up and how I loved that thing. I'd walk down to the tavern library when it was over there and go by that. And I think I remember when they were doing the construction and stuff and just being excited to see this old house being, you know, done over. The recipe, I believe it's for something for the stomach or for a woman's problem, but it's castor and juniper, both effective for stomach issues and both still used today. And I just want to throw that in there because that was what was sent to me. All right, William Proctor. He's the father of American pharmacy. That's Proctor of Procter & Gamble. He went to school at the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy. He helped found the American Pharmaceutical Association. He was president for many years. He was president of the college. He taught at the college. He was everything for pharmacy. And he was a candle maker when he came to the United States from England. But he's the reason why pharmacy is the way it is, basically. And like I said, he's Proctor of Procter & Gamble. All right, so these are the recipes, and I actually just wanted to read a poem that somebody wrote about our friend Zerubbabel. I think it's Zerubbabel. In the beginning of his little book here, and I am actually going to give this to this. This is something I printed up. There's no copyright on this at all, so this is free range. Anybody can have it, but I'm going to leave this with you guys. If you like it, it's the list of all the medicines. Yeah, it's all and everything's in, all the F's are F's and stuff. So it's But and it's actually it's blocked out who wrote this, but it's somebody that really felt fondly of him. And pardon me for struggling with this because, like I said, the S's are F's and some of the V's are U's and so on. So. And it's a poem. It's called The Synopsis of Medicine. To his ingenious friend, Mr. Zerubbabel Endicott, upon his treatise entitled Synopsis Medicine. Welcome, my friend, upon our English stage, who freely art displays in this our age, the art of healing mankind who have need of able doctors that can cure with speed all such diseases which assault us sore, and spares no persons, be they rich or poor. Health is a jewel far more rich than gold, more to be prized than wealth 10,000-fold. How ought we then to prize our author much, whose labor and industry hath been such, that nothing in this book is wanting. And remember what I'm saying here, because this is incredible stuff. That nothing in this book is wanting, which may help in greatest danger, and enrich. Thanks, therefore, noble Endicott, thou shalt eternize for thy fame, admired of me, be that in so small a tract thou shouldest comprise whole volumes of the learned. But likewise thou showest how to root disease out, as fevers, agues, scurvy, pox, and gout. Let great Apollo therefore crown thy head, and speak thy praise long after thou art dead. Then, though thy body in the grave may rot, thy name shall live and never be forgot, which is proved right now by me telling you. Till time doth cease as well as books to be, and all things swallowed in externity. Oh, God. Yeah, so he was, all right, and I'll remind you that these are his, not mine. All right, so falling sickness. Falling sickness is epilepsy. And this is specifically for children. So we get ashes of the dung of a cow, a black cow, 1 scruple. Now I'll show you what scruples are later on. Scruples are part of a measurement system called the avoirdupois. It's old pharmacy that we learned when we first went to school, and I don't think they teach it anymore. 1 scruple given to a newborn infant. So you feed your child dung. And not only preserve from the epilepsy, but also cure it. Now, if that was the case, we would be feeding the children dung who have epilepsy, and we do not do that. In those of a ripe age, the livers of 40 water frogs brought into powder and given 5 times in the spirit of rosemary and lavender, morning and evening, will cure the sick, not eating or drinking 2 hours before nor after. Now, the only thing that's really works here is the 2 hours before or after. That's what I tell people is an empty stomach. You do not eat or drink 1 or 2 hours before or after taking the medicine. 40 water frog livers. I'm surprised nobody croaked. I should have told you this was going to be. So apparently, to get these water frogs, they had to wade knee deep into the pond. All right, that's it. That's all right. I got a captive audience. I'll be here all week.
I know.
So,
Until you croak.
until I grow. All right. A powder for the disease of the head or falling sickness. This is more in adults. Heart qualms that have been used off. All right. So this one's pretty disgusting. White amber has no medicinal value whatever. 2 drachms. I don't know what diarrhodium is. I looked that up. I just could not find it. Seeds of peony has medicinal properties. It actually is used for calming the mood. Mistletoe is actually used for cancer treatment in Europe to this day, but also was found to be something to help with the nerves. But the filings of a dead man's skull. 1 scruple, and make into a very fine powder, and take as much as will lie on a shilling, however big a shilling is. 2 or 3 nights together before the new and after the full moon, before the new full moon, with Saxony and Bettenwater. Mind you, this is around the times of witchcraft. All this stuff sounds witchcrafty to me. But the dead man's skull, they'd get that from recently killed prisoners, the executed people, so on and so forth. They would actually get it. Okay, now this is for women who are pregnant and having sharp and difficult travel. And if you don't believe me, this is all in this book. It really is. I'm translating this. So you take a lock of virgin hairs of any part of the head of half the age of the woman in travel. Meaning if she's 24, you're taking a 12-year-old girl and you're taking a clip of her hair. You're making it into a small, very fine powder. Then you take 12 ant eggs. That's why I have the ants in the background with the ant eggs. Those are ant eggs. And you dry it in the oven after ye bread is drawn. So you make your bread first. Then you put the ant eggs in there. All right? Or otherwise, make them dry and make them into a powder with the hair. And give this with 1/4 of a pint of red cow's milk. Or for want of it, give in a strong ale wort to a pregnant woman. Red cow's milk comes from a red cow. It's not milk that's red. For the first few weeks I was doing this, I kept thinking that was red, like somehow the milk was red. No, it comes from a cow that's called a red cow. But I don't think I would want to be giving a pregnant woman ale. All right, now we get to the cats. For a person that's distracted, if it be a woman, so if they're like me and have ADD, easily distracted, take the milk of a nurse that gives suck to a male child. So you're getting breast milk from a woman who is nursing a male child. Also take a he-cat. Cut one of his ears or a piece of it and let it bleed into the milk and let the sick woman drink it and do this 3 times. And that's why you've got the skeleton of a cat over there too, by the way, which is plastic. It's plastic. I got it from CVS. Yeah, so no, just no. Try to get a cat to lend his ear. Maybe Van Gogh could do it, but. All right, so now this is for colic or flux. Flux is basically diarrhea. Flux in your belly. Powder of wolf's guts. And then the powder of boar's stones. Now boar's stones can only be taken from really old boars. And these are boars, B-O-A-R-S. From what I understand, the stones came from their teeth area, and they were round, misshapen, and they could crush them up. You really can't get them, and I'm not sure who'd want to try to get one. But oil of wormwood drops into the navel, like it's going to go through the navel into the stomach and do something to help. But actually oil of wormwood, oil of fennel, oil of mints, all have medicinal properties, and they are actually antispasmodics, and they help calm the stomach down. So yes, those actually do have some properties. Conserve is a type of a jam, so mint, conserve of roses, conserve of mallows. Mallows also is good for the stomach. If your pain be extreme, use it again. It may then apply something hot to the belly if you have to. All right, for shingles, another cat. Take the house, I don't know what the house leek is, but cat's blood and cream mixed together in ointment, and place warm, or take the moss that groweth in the well and mix that with the cat's blood, and then apply it to the shingles. So if you need to, you just go to the well and pull some moss off and mix it with some cat's blood and lay it on your shingles. Why didn't we think of that? That's Sylvester. Ague. Ague is both malaria and also a condition where you get fever and just feel kind of ugh. Take the dry shell of a turtle and beat it small. And then this one you just boil in water and then 2/3 of the water is consumed. I'm not sure why they figured 2/3 instead of 3/3, the whole thing, but. And then do that 2 or 3 times when the ague cometh. They had to go, a lot of effort here trying to harness this stuff. Bloody flux is bloody diarrhea.
Right.
Take the hearts of dolphins, the hearts of a dolphin, dry them and grate them into a powder and give a spoonful of powder in rum or brandy. And it is a present remedy. Also the hearts of other fish, very good, used in the same manner. I think I prefer cod, flounder. I don't feel as attached to them. They don't go like this on the water and stuff, talk to you or save people or anything like that. I don't know how they're going to catch these dolphins. So I guess they're good fishermen. All right, this is actually the last slide of the recipe. Toothache. Who wants to take the beak off of that? Picking the gums with the bill of an osprey is good for a toothache. Scarifying gums with a thorn from a dogfish's back is also a cure. That is a telephone pole. That's a big bird. That has got talons and a very sharp, pointy beak. I've seen them on Plum Island. They're nasty looking, just mean looking. I don't know how. And then first of all, you also think, who's the first one that did it? Who thought, geez, that looks like something I want to pick my teeth with? I mean, a lot of these things are like that. I mean, shavings from a dead man's skull. Who's the first one to try that? All right, so this is the end. Does anybody know what that is?
Makes pills?
No, but close. It makes something.
Bullets?
That makes suppositories. That's why it's the end. That's actually an antique pharmacy mold. We actually use those in school. When I was in school, we actually used those to make suppositories in lab. And I call that an antique because they just don't do that anymore.
Did you try them out or?
No, but they were examined very closely. And I'll tell you, whenever anybody comes to the store and asks me where we keep the suppositories, I always tell them in the rear. So that's the end of that part of the presentation. But I did want to kind of show you some of these little gadgets that I brought here, a couple of them at least. These are a lot of these are replicas of things. This one here. And I will tell you that a lot of these came from Joe Price's store. This came from Joe Price's store. This came from Joe Price's store. This was Joe's. That was Joe's. The alcohol lamp is Joe's. And this here is a smaller version of what we call a color globe. But this is actually an inhaler.
Oh.
Somebody gets a puffer and they're puffing, this is what they used. It's like a bong basically, if you know what a bong is. You would fill it up, and this is actually not an antique because it's got Naldicon on it. It's a replica. But you would fill it up with steaming water, and you would. I'm not going to do it because I don't know where this has been. But you would, do this and release it and get some fluids in. This right here is Joe's. He didn't use this one when I was there, but basically what this is, it numbers the prescriptions. He'd stamp it.
Yeah.
He hasn't used this for a long time. Of course he hasn't used it for a long time. He didn't use it for a long time when I was there. It was something else he was using to number the prescription. This is an invalid's drinking cup, they call that. And it's got some measures on it. This here, you weren't related to Dorothy and John Parker, who used to live next door to me on Hill Street.
No.
Okay, but you know who I'm talking about?
But I know who you're talking about.
When I went back to school for pharmacy, my neighbor Dorothy Parker loved to go antiquing. And she brought me back the most wonderful stuff she'd go and buy it and just give it to me. And I wouldn't be home, my mom would say, oh, Dorothy stopped by again with more stuff. She gave me this right here, this box here and this here. This is a scale. And this actually has written on it, scruples and drachms.
Oh.
These are all the measures that are antique and very, very old, no longer used. But it actually has a list of 3 scruples equals 1 drachm and the conversions here. You won't find that many places. This is another very old scale
Oh,
that she gave me. This is actually, you can't, it's crystal. This is a crystal measuring cup, etched, hand etched. It's one of my prized possessions, and it even has this wonderful safe little box to keep it in, which I'm going to put it in right now. This is an alcohol lamp. This is what they use to heat things up. You fill this with alcohol like that. Let's see, mortars and pestles. This is more of a foreign. This is from I think South America or Africa. But they're all basically the same concept. You get the mortar and the pestle, you grind things up in those. And up until 10 years ago, I was still using those to make compounds, and we just don't do it anymore. It's too dangerous. Cleanliness and stuff. This here was something I got at Joe's. Imagine this. You're going to get married. You need a blood sample. You need to send it to the Department of Public Health. You put a vial of blood into this padded tube, and then you screw this on the top, and you drop that in the mail. Jamaica Plains.
It's still in Jamaica
Yeah,
Plains.
the Wasserman Laboratory.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's still there.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That goes to the Wasserman
What
Laboratory.
year was that used? Do you have any?
Oh, I don't know. The 8-cent stamp.
Oh my God. It's-
Probably like 1940s or
Yeah,
something?
that's what I guess.
30s or
Well, I can't say the 40s because this came from Joe's store, and he opened up in 1953.
Oh, so there
Right.
we are.
And I was actually thinking about that the other day, which is kind of scary. I started working with Joe in 1984, 32 years ago. He started in, I think it was either 1953 or 1954, but he retired in 1991, which was about 37, 38 years. I'm going on 32 years in pharmacy in North Reading.
Wow.
So in another 6 or 7 years, I'll surpass him for a length of time in North Reading serving in a pharmacy. Not as a pharmacist, I was a pharmacist in 94, but in a capacity in a pharmacy. And then there's all kinds of little bottles here. These all came from my neighbor. This is Fletcher's Castoria, and it's actually imprinted right on the bottle there. These are antiques, and some different measuring bottles and stuff like that. And then just to prove that I went to school here, this is actually the smock that I wore to work on Thanksgiving Day, because we don't get Thanksgiving off. Thanksgiving Day was complete with my letter on it to give luck to the team, and we won that day. And I think it's only because I was wearing my green and gold. I handmade this, and I actually even sewed that on there. And this is actually an official CVS smock. It has my pharmacy on it. Yeah. And then some books here that I brought. This one here. Anybody remember Helen Zimmerman?
Yes.
A wonderful, wonderful lady. Made us always sing for our candy when we walk up to her house. She was my dad's homeroom teacher, and probably a lot of people's homeroom teachers that might have gone to school in Reading. She was a PhD in botany at a very, very early time. A lot of these books came from her. When she passed away, Alice Nickerson came into the store one day, and I said, I used to deliver medicine to Helen, and I'd see these wonderful old science books, and I was in school for pharmacy, and I said to her, she had these. She says, "Is there anything you want?" I said, "Well, she had these old pharmacy books, and they were having an estate sale." And I said, "I'd love to buy these books because they mean something to me. They were hers." And one day she showed up with a big box, and she put it on the counter, and she goes, "Here you go." I said, "What's that?" She says, "Those are the books." I said, "Well, how much are they?" She goes, "They're yours. She would want you to have them." And so I've got this book right here is called Our Home Doctor. I think this is from the 1800s. One of the fascinating things about this is there's a chapter in the back on suspended animation, like reviving people from the dead. And the reason that was in there is because they didn't have sophisticated equipment back then, and people could be buried alive. They didn't know they were dead, and it happened. And so there's a whole chapter on that in the back of this book. This here came from Dorothy Parker, my neighbor. This is 1796. This is a dispensary. This is the Edinburgh Dispensary, which is one of the renowned, right? This is this has the F's and the S's and things like that, and I actually used this to look up medications that were in this talk. I actually used this. Headed appraised, it's not really worth a whole lot, but it's worth a lot to me. But that came from Dorothy. And then speaking of Helen Zimmerman, I just brought this because I thought this was just wonderful. I'll just open it up a little bit. You can take a closer look. These are pressings
Oh,
from Woods Hole, circa 1927. These are almost 100 years old. These are frameable. My thought is that I'm actually going to probably make a trip down to Woods Hole sometime and give this to them. Because these are still in good shape. A lot of these, these are all the, wonderful, wonderful pressings. She was an amazing woman. And then History of Medicine. This is an old book, but it's not nearly the age of those there. But.
who wrote it? Who wrote the history of medicine?
This one here was, I actually know this, I have, for any people who have had medical degrees of any kind and took a microbiology course, there's a famous microbiology book called Zinzer. And I've got a second edition that I got from her, and that's 1920s also. This was written by Garrison. Fielding H. Garrison. He's Lieutenant Colonel, the Medical Corps, U.S. Army Surgeon General's Office, Washington, D.C. This is 1921. Yeah, so the military. But a lot of the stuff in here still holds true. But it's a history of medicine. That's where I got a lot of the information on Paracelsus and Paracelsus, yes.
Yeah.
Peristalsis is the swallow. And I was afraid that what would happen by showing you all these disgusting things that you'd all have reverse peristalsis.
Hey, Tim,
Yes.
have you focused at all on the medicine of the Civil War? Just because we've been getting so much.
I didn't. I kind of cut it off in the 1600s. I was thinking Daniel Putnam and that. But medicine in the Civil Wars was, I think, more treating traumatic injury and infection. Infection, you could get shot and survive, but you wouldn't survive the infection because they used sulfa-based antibiotic type things. One thing I did find in my research up until recently was syphilis apparently was treated using mercury.
Yes.
And I think that's worse than, yeah, they'd lose their hair and teeth would fall out and all that. But as far as Civil War, I think a lot of that was just trying to treat the traumatic injuries and infection. I will say that around the time of the Civil War, a little bit later, we had the first use of anesthesia. And it was actually right in Boston, in Mass General, in the Ether Dome.
Yeah.
There was a dentist. And I think the Ether Dome is still there. I've never seen it myself, but I'd like to, if it's open, I'd love to
It
go
is
see
there.
it. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it open to the public?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to go see that sometime because it's,
And they still have a mummy there too.
Do they really? And a daddy too?
No, no, no. I don't know if you watched Mercy Street, the recent Civil War drama about taking over a hotel in Washington and converting it to a hospital.
Oh, yeah.
The thing that, the medications that were suggested there, they used chloroform for anesthesia for amputations. And the other thing for pain relief was morphine.
Yeah, morphine was huge.
Yeah.
Charles Dickens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those were the only two things I could pick up on them, or not.
Well, aspirin's been around for a while too. And aspirin's been around, I believe it was the bark of wintergreen trees.
Yeah.
And somebody had a pain and started chewing on the side of a tree and started feeling better.
Who knows? But one thing actually I forgot to mention, the smallpox epidemic, which was around that time. One of the things that happened, and this was important, I can't believe I missed this. When the 10,000 troops that got sick came back, George Washington ordered the troops to have something called a variolation.
A what?
Variolation.
V-A-L?
It's immunization, basically. And what it involved was, you'd find somebody who had active smallpox, so they had the blisters.
Yeah,
And they'd take a needle and thread, and they would pass it through the pock,
yeah,
and then they'd go around to the soldiers and pass it through them.
right.
Okay? It turns out this is extremely successful. I mean, it really, it worked, but it also killed a lot of people too, as you can imagine. But imagine coming to me for your flu shot, and I say, hold on a second, one of my technicians comes over, he's got the flu, and I run a needle through the thick of his thumb, and then, you know,
It was bad enough.
it's bad enough, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if anybody got a shot from me, they know that if you know me pretty well, you probably got the big metal one
Yeah.
from Joe. Yeah, yeah, I got that from Joe. I didn't bring that because that would make people faint. You know? And I need to push immunization, not push them away from the immunization. You know, so,
Where
yeah.
did Washington get that idea?
It had been around for a while, actually. Europe was doing it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And you know something, I honestly don't know who did it first, but the Europeans were using it. And it was very successful. I think that after a while you kind of figure that being around people sneezing and spraying on you and you're catching disease from it, there's something in there. And you know, maybe somebody was exposed to a small amount of biology from somebody else and they got mild symptoms and it went away. And that's how vaccinations work. You know, you get a little piece of that and put it in you. Now, when you get a flu shot, the virus that I give you is dead. You cannot get the flu from the shot, no matter what the interweb tells you. You cannot get the flu from a flu shot. You can get symptoms of the flu from the flu shot. They're mild and they're transient. They'll stop quickly. You can't get the flu from the shot. You can get it from the, I believe you can get it from the nasal because that's a live one, but you cannot get it from the shot. You can't get shingles from the shot.
How come we got the shingles?
You can still get the shingles if you get the shingles shot. You're just not going to get it from the shot. Yeah, it'll just make it less. It'll make it less. Usually it's less harsh. I got the flu last week. I spent the entire week in bed. I had the flu shot.
Yeah, but there are many viruses that cause flu
Exactly,
symptoms.
exactly.
Yeah.
But what happens is that my body had the flu shot in me, and so that I didn't get it nearly as bad as it could have been. It could have been a lot worse. You know, but my body was prepared for it. And I have a very good immune system. I've called out sick 4 times my entire life, and I'm a pharmacist. Twice last week. Okay, so, you know.
But I mean, I got the shingle shot, and the next year I got the shingles.
You still can. You can still get the flu. You can still get pneumonia if you get a pneumonia vaccine. It just makes it less harsh. You're not going to get it as aggressively. It'll be less painful, less symptoms, so on. But you can still get it. You can still get that. You know, so it's not foolproof 100%, but it's good. Yeah.
You were talking about a measurement in one of the
The
talks.
scruples and the drachms.
Yeah, what,
Yeah, that was the little box here from the scale.
oh, yeah.
These are scruples and drachms in here.
So is it like a gram, an ounce?
Well, you can't really convert them like that. It turns out it's grains. They're called grains. They're their own weight. I still have a couple medications that are measured in grains. I have a thyroid medication called Armour Thyroid, which is in grains. It also shows the milligrams too.
People use it?
People use it.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's basically 1 grain. I believe is, I want to say it's 30 or 60 milligrams. We rarely use them that way, so it's hard to tell. But phenobarbital still has grains on the bottles, but they're also do the milligrams too. They're both on there. There's no medicine you'll get that's strictly grains or scruples or drachms. You know? We actually had to do math problems in college that involve scruples and drachms and stuff and figure it out. And they're weird symbols. They're little squiggly things. There's one that looks like an epsilon symbol, and you know all these things in there. It's fascinating. Some of the recipes in here actually show the symbols. They show the symbols of the measurements and things like that. The scruples and drachms.
So when you're talking about immunization, are there 2 kinds? One where you actually give a weakened form of a germ, and others that are synthetic. And if it's synthetic, what do they do to like kill a bacteria?
Yeah, there's really no synthetic immunizations. what they'll do is there's live, they call them live attenuated, and then there's killed. And what they do is they take the killed viruses, and basically they'll take parts of the virus and they'll put it into a vaccine, and they put that part in your body, and your body thinks it's got a full-blown flu virus. And so its army starts building and attacking it. And so that's why I tell you, you can still get the flu within 2 weeks because your body is building up its immunity over several weeks as it's doing its job. Live attenuated is a vaccine that it's a virus that's still alive, but it's altered so that it's not as bad. It's not the full virus, not the full virus being injected directly in your body. But it's like, I think the polio, we don't do the polio in our store, but I believe polio was alive. And you could actually catch polio from the immunization, because that was live attenuated, I believe. So there's no real synthetic. You have to have something from the host, from the virus itself, to put into the host and have your body attack it. And you can't really, I mean, I'm sure with genetics nowadays, they could probably recreate something, but I don't know if I want somebody in a lab trying to make a virus, in any way, really, so. Yeah.
Are doctors using computers more now and writing prescriptions?
Oh, God, yes.
So that helps you a lot.
No. No, it's actually sometimes worse, because they're using drop-down menus. So they're going to want to prescribe, amoxicillin for somebody, and the first thing that comes up on the screen is ampicillin. And they just go, hit that, and then they do the dosing wrong, and then they send me the wrong quantity. Sometimes they can't actually put the directions in the direction area. They have to put it in a comment section below. So I'm filling a prescription, and I've got the directions saying 1 3 times a day, but down in his comments he says, I want to take it 1 4 times a day. But I got a 3 times a day in the SIG code, but under special notes he wants me to do it differently. And then, if you're not sharp, the person gets home and says, well, the doctor told me to take it 4 times a day. Well, no, it says right, oh, there it is, you're right, So it makes it more legible. I can certainly read them better, and it's less time consuming because they can actually transmit it directly into my computer now. So a doctor has this thing, and some people will come to my pharmacy and they'll say, the doctor just sent the script, you should be ready by now. And it's just like 5 minutes between the doctor and here.
Yeah.
No, it's got to go to outer space. You got to give it time. It's got to go to outer space. It's going to bounce off of California to Texas, and then it's going to come to you. It's not instantaneous. And then on top of that, we have to enter it in the computer. We have to fill the prescription. Then it comes to me. Then I got to make sure that it's the right thing, for the right disease, and you don't have any allergies or interactions with anything else you're taking. If we just slap labels on bottles and throw pills in a bottle, most of us would be dead right now. And unfortunately, it's hard for people to see that because they come to the register and they just see us scrambling around like chickens with our head cut off, and don't understand the complexity of it. We will fill upwards of 500 prescriptions a day. And in 12 hours, that's about a prescription every minute or two. All right? And we have to be right every single time. Every single time. And it doesn't always happen. God forbid, I knock on wood. Mistakes happen, but there are lots of technologies that are available to us that are helping that. But it's a lot of prescriptions. We do 2,500 scripts a week between 3 pharmacists. So you figure if you extrapolate that over a year, I personally am checking about 40,000 prescriptions a year. The doctors see 10 or 15 patients a day. I see hundreds. And I'm not going to point anybody out. Because of HIPAA policy. But it is what it is. It's become very, very. When I started with Joe, a busy day at Joe's was 80 prescriptions. We were breaking a sweat. He started out on a typewriter, 1 finger at a time, and he'd have his. He had. As a matter of fact, it's really funny because I'm doing this now too.
Same thing, yeah.
You'd be.
Yeah.
And then he got the first pharmacy computer in the town. Joe Price had the first pharmacy computer. He had 3 before he sold to CVS. And when he sold to CVS, we were still doing more prescriptions than CVS was doing. But 80 was a busy day. 80, we were breaking a sweat, and it was crazy. Right? I do that before 11 o'clock in the morning. 80 prescriptions. Now, everything he was doing, I actually have a roll of his labels at home still, too. And he would roll that up in a typewriter and type everything on that label. I can't imagine that. Prescription insurance, very rare back then. I would send a handwritten universal claim form to the insurance company, and maybe 2 or 3 months later, we'd get the rejection. They'd say, oh, you need to correct this. I'd fix it and mail it back. A few months later, we'll either get it accepted or rejected again. Right now, when I do it, it's almost instantaneous. Almost instantaneous. I just send it, and they tell me, they're the ones that tell me what to do. When you get a copay that's $300, it's got nothing to do with me. It's them. It's them. Prioritizations, it's them. You know, it's not us. We're just doing what we're told. You know, so sometimes if it's a $200 copay, I'll tell a person it's $500, and they'll go, "Oh my God, what?" And I'll say, "No, it's only $200." Oh, thank God. And that's where the psychology degree comes in. Very and just surviving the day sometimes.
You know, Tim, not to embarrass you, but my daughter reminded us of kind of when a couple of years ago we were talking about this whole thing and the amount of the prescriptions and everything, and she said, you know, I don't think you people realize, but she said, everybody that comes into that place, I have to remind myself, if I am not absolutely precise and I don't check every single thing, I could kill somebody.
Absolutely.
And she said, every single person that comes in, their life is in my hands.
Yeah.
So I think that you probably think about that pretty often
Well, you
too.
know, and not for nothing, I grew up in North Reading.
Yeah.
And most of the people here are basically family.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I started Hilltop Kindergarten and graduated from North Reading High School. You know, played football. I was a shot putter. Scott was in all the plays and stuff, and music, and you know, we're pretty grounded. That's why I stayed here. I live in Newburyport now. I'm not gonna live here. But, you know, I'll work here. Imagine if I lived here, I'd be going in the Stop and Shop to get something to eat, and I'm walking down the aisles and somebody wants to show me a rash.
Yeah.
And it happens. You know? Nobody up there knows I'm a pharmacist except for very few people, so I can walk around and just, you
Well,
know.
we'll announce it, I'll let them know,
Yeah.
just so you can be
Yeah.
harassed.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I actually brought part of our family tree. Now I know this is the Flint Library, but is it involve Abigail Flint?
No, Harriet.
Harriet?
Oh, yeah, Harriet.
Okay. Then it's not going to work. Scott and I are direct descendants of Nathaniel Batchelder. We're the big Batchelder crew from Reading. And Nathaniel Batchelder was married to Abigail Flint. So I'm sure that they're connected somehow, some way, that this building, the Flint Library thing, possibly were descendants of that. But definitely the Batchelders. We're about as towny as we come. And actually Jake with an Andover too. Family name, but I did the family tree a bunch of years ago, and Batchelder, the Nathaniel Batchelder house in Reading was in our family until 1972, and the same family still owns it, and I'd always go by it and think, when that for sale sign goes up. We actually almost bought it before we moved to Haverhill Street. And else,
Was that the title search in '72 where it was signed by King George II or something? It was a land grant from Her Majesty, His Majesty.
the house was built in 1751.
Yeah.
So it's
He married a
very
widow.
well made. Yeah, and we actually had an opportunity to buy it, but it was $28,000. The house over here was $26,000. So $2,000 back in 1968 was a big deal.
Residential house.
Yeah, but
You know what I mean?
yeah, we're about as town
Get
as
the
we
name of
know.
the road there now, you know.
Yeah.
Across from the old school.
Okay, any more questions? Feel free to look and I don't mind not wearing white gloves to handle any of the old books.
Is
They're-
that the cat that they use for all the blood?
Yeah, I know, that's so funny. That's
I
actually,
wanted to.
I was debating on whether to bring this. This is actually a plastic, and I got it from CVS for Halloween. I have a matching dog. Yeah. And I set it up in my driveway. I have a narrow driveway, and I had built my neighbor a little lemonade stand, and I used that to give out candy. and I had a fog machine. And I had the dog sitting on the ground. But unfortunately, I placed the fog machine directly behind the dog's rear end. And the kids were coming and saying, you know, your dog is tooting up a storm here. And I learned, I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize it was coming out from behind the dog. You know, but it got a lot of laughs.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you, it was an honor, it really was. It was really fun.
That's great.
Tell Lillian. Where's Lily? Lily.
Here's the,
You want to do it?
so the, yeah, this is the book of
We have some
recipes.